Most people will never build real wealth, not because they are lazy, not because they are unlucky, not because the system is rigged against them, though parts of it are, and I will get to that. Most people will never build real wealth because they have been taught a definition of money that makes wealth mathematically impossible from the very first day they enter the workforce. They were handed a map at the beginning of their journey. They followed that map faithfully, diligently, sometimes brilliantly, and the map was wrong. Not slightly wrong, fundamentally, structurally, permanently wrong. I call this the wage illusion, and most of you watching this right now have been living inside it your entire working life without ever knowing its name. Welcome to the most important conversation about money you have never been allowed to have. Let me teach you the way I wish someone had taught me when I was young, not with slogans, not with motivation, with the only language that has ever told the truth about money, mathematics. Here is the first mathematical truth I want you to hold on to. Your income and your wealth are not the same thing. They are not even related things. They are opposite things. And the moment you truly understand that sentence, not intellectually, not as a concept, but in the marrow of your decisions, everything changes. I have known people who earned $200,000 a year for 30 years and retired with nothing. I have known people who earned $40,000 a year for 30 years and died with generational wealth. The difference was never the income. The difference was always the architecture, what they built with what they had, how many of their dollars were working while they slept, and how early they understood that a salary, no matter how large, is not wealth. It is raw material, and most people spend the raw material before they ever build anything with it. Let me take you inside the wage illusion so you can see exactly how it works and why it is so difficult to escape. When you are young, the system offers you a trade. You give it your time, your energy, your focus, your most productive hours, your best years, and in exchange, it gives you money at regular intervals, a paycheck, reliable, predictable, recurring. And that reliability is the drug. I have said before that a salary is a drug, a steady drip that numbs your ambition. I do not say that to be cruel. I say it because it is the most precise description I have ever found. The human brain is wired to seek certainty, and a paycheck is the most certain financial experience most people ever have. Every 2 weeks, the number appears. Every month, the bills are covered. The brain registers this as safety. And once the brain registers something as safety, it resists anything that threatens to disrupt that feeling. That resistance is the cage. That comfort is the ceiling. And I call that ceiling the comfort ceiling, the invisible upper boundary of wealth that most people never cross, not because they cannot, but because crossing it requires walking away from the only financial security they have ever known. Now I want to tell you about the linear income trap, because this is where the mathematics becomes devastating. A salary is linear income. You work 1 hour, you earn 1 hour's worth of pay. You work 40 hours, you earn 40 hours worth of pay. If you stop working, through illness, through injury, through recession, through age, the income stops, immediately, completely. There is no buffer, there is no momentum, there is no machine that keeps producing while you rest. Linear income has a ceiling built into it by physics, not by policy. There are only 24 hours in a day. Even if you could sell every single one of them at a premium, you would hit the wall. And yet 90% of the working population of the United States, and most of the developed world, derives almost all of its income from this single, fragile, time-dependent source. Charlie Munger, my partner of over 50 years, the man I consider the sharpest financial mind I have ever known, used to say that the goal of financial life is to build a machine that makes money while you sleep. He was not being poetic. He was describing the only path out of the linear income trap. You must build something, a business, an asset, an investment portfolio, a system that generates returns independent of your physical presence, not instead of working, in addition to working, first alongside your job, then ahead of it, then in place of it. That transition from linear to nonlinear income is the most important financial journey of a human life, and most people never begin it, not because they cannot, because nobody told them it existed. Let me show you something that most financial educators are too polite to say plainly. I call it the proximity poison. You will never out-earn your environment, not consistently, not sustainably, not in a way that builds. I do not mean your physical environment, your city, your neighborhood, your house. I mean your psychological environment. The people you spend the most time with set the unconscious standard for what is considered normal, acceptable, and ambitious in your life. If everyone around you believes that a reliable paycheck is the goal, that a good job, a modest retirement account, and a paid-off mortgage is the definition of financial success, then you will unconsciously calibrate your ambitions to that ceiling. Not because you lack intelligence or drive, but because human beings are social animals, and social animals regulate their behavior to match the herd. A study conducted at Harvard University found that happiness, health behaviors, and financial habits spread through social networks with the same statistical reliability as infectious disease. The people closest to you are not just your friends, they are the architects of your financial imagination, and if their imagination stops at the paycheck, yours will too, unless you are extraordinarily deliberate about expanding it. This is not about abandoning the people you love. I am not telling you to become cold or transactional in your relationships. I am telling you to seek out, with great intentionality, people who are building the kind of financial life you want. People who talk about assets instead of salaries, about cash flow instead of raises, about ownership instead of employment. Those conversations will do more for your net worth than any single investment decision you ever make. Now I want to address something that goes deeper than strategy, deeper than math. I call it the identity anchor. And in all my years of watching people interact with money, and I have watched thousands of people interact with money across 7 decades of investing, this is the most powerful and most underestimated force I have ever seen. Most people do not stay poor because of bad decisions. Most people stay poor because being poor, or being middle class, or being a hard worker who earns an honest wage has become part of who they are. Their financial situation is not just a circumstance, it is an identity. And changing an identity is far more psychologically threatening than changing a job or a habit or even a relationship. When I ask people why they do not invest, why they do not start a business, why they do not build anything beyond their salary, the most common answer I hear, underneath the practical excuses about time and money and risk, is this: that is not who I am. Sometimes they say it directly, more often they say it through their behavior, through the way they dismiss financial ambition as greed, through the way they mock successful people to protect their own sense of dignity, through the way they spend money the moment they earn it, not because they are irresponsible, but because accumulating wealth would require them to become someone they do not yet recognize as themselves. The identity anchor is heavier than debt. It is heavier than circumstance. It is the deepest reason why most people never build real wealth. And the only way to lift it is not willpower or discipline. It is exposure. Slow, repeated, deliberate exposure to a different version of what is possible for a person like you. Let me tell you about what I call the scarcity reflex, because it is closely related to identity, and it is economically devastating in ways most people never see. Research conducted by economists Sendhil Mullainathan at Harvard and Eldar Shafir at Princeton, published in their landmark work on the psychology of scarcity, demonstrated that when people feel financially constrained, their cognitive bandwidth narrows. They become extraordinarily focused on the immediate financial problem in front of them, and as a result, they lose the mental capacity to think about the long-term financial architecture that would solve the underlying issue. The scarcity itself impairs the thinking required to escape the scarcity. It is not a character flaw, it is neuroscience. The tunnel that financial stress creates is real and measurable. And this is why I have always believed that the first financial goal of anyone in a constrained situation is not to invest aggressively. It is to build a buffer, a small, protected, non-negotiable reserve of cash that creates enough psychological breathing room for the brain to begin thinking beyond the current month. Even $1,000 sitting untouched in a separate account changes the quality of financial thinking. It is not about the money. It is about what the presence of that money does to the mind. It opens the tunnel, it widens the vision, and wider vision is where wealth begins. I want to show you the final and perhaps most mathematically punishing trap of all. I call it the compound void. Most people understand in a general way that compound interest is powerful. They have heard it described as the 8th wonder of the world. I have said something similar myself. But understanding it intellectually and feeling it viscerally are two completely different experiences. Let me make it visceral. A 25-year-old who invests $200 per month into a diversified portfolio with an average annual return of 8%, the approximate historical average of the S&P 500, will have approximately $702,000 by age 65. The same 25-year-old who waits until age 35 to begin that exact same contribution with the exact same return will have approximately $298,000 at 65. The 10-year delay cost $404,000, not because of anything that happened in those 10 years, because of the compounding that did not happen. The compound void is not just the absence of money. It is the absence of the machine that makes money. Every year you spend your entire paycheck. Every year you consume your income instead of deploying a portion of it into assets. You are not just spending money. You are destroying the machine that would have made you wealthy. You are killing a future that compounds. And because compounding is exponential and not linear, the early years are worth vastly more than the late years. The most expensive decision most people make is not a bad investment. It is the decision to wait until they feel ready. They never feel ready. And the waiting costs more than any single mistake ever could. Now you might be thinking, Warren, this is fine for someone who had capital to start with. You came from a privileged background. You had access. You had mentors. You had Omaha in the 1940s, not a paycheck-to-paycheck life in 2026. You are right to say that. You are right to say that the circumstances are different and that the barriers are real. I am not dismissing the barriers. I am asking you to stop letting the barriers be the last word. Because here is what I know from watching people build wealth across every conceivable background and starting point. The people who built something never waited for the barriers to disappear. They built in the presence of barriers. They started with whatever small fraction of their income they could defend, 5%, 3%, sometimes just 1%, and they protected it with the same ferocity most people reserve for their bills. They treated their future self as a creditor, and over time, that small fraction built the machine. The machine built momentum, and the momentum built wealth. Not quickly, not dramatically, quietly, the way all real wealth is built. Quietly, slowly, and entirely invisible to the people around you until the day it suddenly is not. I want you to do something for me right now. Not tomorrow, not after this video ends. Right now in this moment. I want you to ask yourself one question. Not what is my salary, not what is in my account, but how many of my dollars are currently working without me? How many of my dollars are in assets, in investments, in equity, in something that earns a return while I sleep? If the answer is zero, or close to zero, then everything else we have talked about today is the explanation for that number. The wage illusion told you income was wealth. The comfort ceiling told you security was success. The linear income trap told you trading time for money was the only option. The proximity poison told you that the people around you defined the boundary of the possible. The identity anchor told you that someone like you does not build that kind of wealth. The scarcity reflex narrowed your vision to the month in front of you, and the compound void quietly, invisibly, relentlessly erased the future you could have been building this entire time. I am 95 years old. I have lived long enough to watch 3 generations of families make the same financial mistakes in different decades with different technologies and different excuses, and the same fundamental misunderstanding of what money is and what it is for. Money is not a reward for working hard. That is the illusion. Money is a tool for building machines, and the machines are what build wealth. You can start building that machine today with $50, with $20, with whatever you can protect from consumption in this single pay period. The amount does not matter at the beginning. The habit matters. The architecture matters. The decision to begin, made today, not when you feel more ready, not when you earn a little more, not when the timing is better. That decision is worth more than any single investment you will ever make. Imagine yourself at 80, sitting somewhere still and quiet the way old people sit, looking back across the span of a financial life. What will you regret more? That you waited too long to feel comfortable, or that you started too late to let time do what only time can do? I have billions of dollars. I built them slowly, starting at age 11 with a single stock purchase, through decades of patience and discipline, and the refusal to be distracted by the noise of the moment. But I cannot buy back a single year of compounding that was lost to waiting. I cannot reach back into my own timeline and add the years. Neither can you. The machine must be started now. The seed must be planted now. Because the tree does not grow from the day you decide to plant it. The tree grows from the day you actually put it in the ground. The door to the cage is open. It has always been open. The cage is not your salary. The cage is the story you have been told about what your salary means and where it ends and what it can never become. Walk out of that story. Start with whatever you have. Start today. Not because the timing is perfect, because the timing will never be perfect. And the only move that ever changed anything was the one made in an imperfect moment by someone who decided that waiting was the most expensive option of all. That is all. Thanks for watching.